Welcome back to Urban X-Files. My name is Keith and today is a story about an urban legend that is well known throughout the UK. And this legend has the name Spring-heeled Jack. Hit the UK sometime in the Victorian area. And this story dates back to 1837. And in Victorian times, Barnes Common is not like it is today. It's a south bank of the Thames and it was a place to steer clear from. Travellers were often attacked and robbed, and sometime around the 1837, a man who'd been working in his office had took a shortcut across the common on his way home. A strange figure had suddenly jumped high over the railings of the cemetery and landed with a thud in front of him. The man turned and fled when he saw that the eerie goblin-looking figure had pointed ears. He had glowing eyes and a pointed nose. 3 women encountered the same sinister figure the following night. He made his appearance by jumping over the railings of the same cemetery. One of the girls had a coat ripped by him but had luckily managed to escape, closely followed by her friend. The 3rd girl tried to scream as this goblin-looking stranger grabbed at her breasts and began ripping off her clothes. During the following month, the goblin-looking entity struck again, this time along Clapham Common. After visiting her parents in Battersea, Miss Stevens, a servant, headed back to her employer's household, and as she walked to the entrance of Cutthroat Lane, a tall figure dressed in black appeared out of the darkness and grabbed her, holding her in a vice-like grip. Before she had a chance to scream, he grabbed her face and then put his hand into her top before cackling like a madman. The girl screamed and the stranger was released and he ran off into the night. A number of men hurried to the distraught girl. After calming her down, they listened to her account of the attack. The men went in search for the mysterious sleeping madman, but without success. The following evening, the attacker appeared again, and not a stone's throw from a house where the disturbing girl had worked. That night, the goblin-looking figure bounded out of the shadows into the path of an approaching carriage. The horses pulling the carriage bolted in fright, and a terrible crash happened and injured the coachman. The goblin-looking entity seemed to defy the law of gravity as he jumped easily over a 9-foot wall. Not long after that, the same high-jumping goblin with a cape attacked a woman near Clapham churchyard, and as the news of the goblin spread, the public gave him his name, Spring-heeled Jack. In February of 1838, an 18-year-old girl named Lucy and his sister Margie were on their way home after visiting their brother's house in the Limehouse area. Suddenly, the terrifying silhouette of Spring-heeled Jack jumped out of the darkness and exhaled a blue jet of flames from his mouth into Lucy's face. The teenager screamed. Her legs collapsed underneath her and she fell to the ground, blinded. Jack jumped high over his victim and his sister landed on the roof of a house, and off into the night Jack went. And Jack seemed to like molesting and terrifying these young women. The next attack happened only 2 days later, but was also on an 18-year-old girl, Jane Alsop. Jane's house was near Bearhine Lane, a quiet back street in the area of Bow, where she lived with her father and 2 sisters. She spent the evening reading when, just before 9 p.m, there was a knock on the door. She answered the door, and in the shadows stood this strange goblin-looking man. He said to Jane, "Bring a light, we've caught Spring-heeled Jack in the lane." Jane ran back into the house and returned with a candle, offering the candle to the caller. As she handed the candle to the man at the door, as the light lit up the face of this nightmarish sight. The flickering light illuminated the face of the goblin-looking man, and pretending to be an officer of the law, it was Jack. As he grinned and he leered into the girl's shocked expression, before she could move, he spurted out his fluorescent blue gas, which partially blinded Jane. Then he started his usual thing of tearing off her clothes. Jane punched him square in the face and managed to give him the slip, but this enraged Jack, and he bolted after her and stopped her from re-entering the house by clutching her hair. His claw-like hands scraped her face and neck, but Jane's screams alerted her sisters, who come running out of the house, and they managed to save her from the attacker. The three sisters then went indoors, Spring-heeled Jack chasing them. The door was slammed in Jack's face just in time. When Jane was quizzed by police, the court heard about the assailant's strange appearance. She described a very unusual person. He wore a large helmet and tight-fitting costume, but the cape was just like the ones worn by the policemen of the era. His gloved hands were as cold as ice and powerful like claws, but the most frightening thing about him was his eyes. They was like balls of fire. Only 2 days later, Jane's description was strengthened by the testimony of the butcher from Limehouse. He was the brother of Lucy and Margaret Scales, the victims of the Green Dragon Alley attack. Accounts of Spring-heeled Jack's assault on the ladies of London had soon spread like wildfire, scaring many people into staying indoors after dark, while others decided to organise vigilante patrols. A week after the attack on Jane, Jack called at a house in Turner Street off Commercial Road. A servant answered the door, and Jack, shielding himself half with his face with his cloak as he stood in the shadows, asked the boy if he could talk to the master of the house. As the boy was turning to call for the master, Jack made the mistake of moving out of the shade and into the lamplight. The boy recoiled in horror when he saw the caller had bright orange eyes. As he stood there in a state of shock, he noticed other details about the mysterious caller. He had claws for hands, and under his cloak an embroidered design that resembled the coat of arms, and below this design was the letter W. The boy had heard all the spine-chilling rumours of Jack's demonic eyes and his blue fluorescent gas. He let out a scream so loud, within seconds windows and doors all over the neighbourhood were opening. Jack waved his fist angrily at the boy and then rocketed on the roofs of Commercial Road. When the boy regained his senses, he was cross-quizzed and interrogated repeatedly by the police about his encounter. His inquisitors wondered what the significance of this W was, and some thought that it was the initial of the Marquis of Waterford, widely known as a mischievous prankster. The Marquis was also something of an athlete, but his physical capabilities could obviously not be equated with Jack's superhuman stunts. Even the fittest man on earth could not leap 25 feet into the air, as Jack was alleged to have done many times over. In 1859, the Marquis met his death after falling from a horse, but the reports of Jack continued to pour into London police stations and newspaper offices. Spring-heeled Jack was still at large. He made an appearance in Lancashire one evening, where he shattered the tranquility by leaping over some cottages. A mob confronted the cackling leaper and blasted him with shotguns at point-blank range, but their firepower had no effect, and when the buckshot hit Jack, it sounded as if it was hitting a metal bucket. One night in January of 1879, a man driving his cart across a bridge on the Birmingham and Liverpool Junction Canal on his way home from Woodcote in Shropshire was startled when a black creature with large luminous eyes jumped out of a tree and landed on the horse's back. The man tried to knock the beast off the horse with his whip, but the creature managed to hold on to the frightened animal, which broke into a wild gallop. The man got the cart back under control. The thing jumped high into the air and vanished into the night. By the end of the 19th century, the geographical pattern of sightings of Spring-heeled Jack had indicated he was moving in a westerly direction across the England towards Lancashire. In 1888, the blackguard turned up in Liverpool, where he was seen hurtling down from the roof of Hyde Park Street Reservoir. Soon afterwards, Jack gave a typical performance where he was seen clinging onto the steeple of St. Francis Xavier's in Salisbury Street. Before the crowds filling the streets below, Jack jumped from the steeple and landed somewhere behind a row of houses. The mobs flew and stampeded to see where he had landed, and the rumour spread that he had killed himself. People were subsequently startled when a helmeted, egg-headed figure in white suddenly ran down the street towards them. As several women in the crowd screamed, Jack lifted his arms and flew over William Henry Street. One evening in 1920, a man dressed in white costume was seen by scores of witnesses in Warrington's Horse Market Street, jumping back and forth from the pavements of the rooftops. He finally cleared the town's railway station in one mighty leap and was never seen in the north of England again. In 1948, the last recorded sighting of the sinister goblin-looking figure took place in South Wales. Locals who saw a strange-looking man leaping over the stream near the watery lane surmised that he was the spectre of a man who had drowned in the stream, but the few Welsh folk who were unfortunate enough to encounter the leaper at close quarters swore he was too solid to be a phantom or ghost. Who or what was Springfield Jack? Was he an eccentric rich man who was like Batman, except to cause mayhem rather than saving people? Was he an alien or a creature from the depths of hell? Who knows? What are your theories on Springfield Jack? Do you think there's any truth to Springfield Jack? If so, feel free to leave a comment. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. Take care and see you in the next one.